This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, here on July the 1st, Canada Day, and 1 week away from my 50th birthday. And here we are, July 1st, 2022, and my third interview of today. So after a 12 shifts in my pay period at working at the hospital, I needed this, But my guest today had a hard time getting in here because he had to get in the vehicle with Clint Howard, and Clint Howard had to drive him all the way here, and their cart broke down, and then he had to walk the rest of the way here.
Yeah, it was an issue. It was an issue. It was, and it was all Clint's fault.
I bet it, I guarantee it was all Clint's fault,
Absolutely it was.
Folks, I would have been 5 years old in 1977, and we're going to be celebrating the 45th anniversary of Grand Theft Auto. No, not the game. Not the game.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking about the film, the first film directed by Ron Howard himself. And my guest today, Peter Isacksen. How'd you do, Peter?
Hey. Good. It's it takes me back because it's like one of those, as I said to you when you texted me or whatever, it was like, I truly would not be sitting in this chair without Ron Howard. And it's one of those stories that if you believe in a kind of a fate kind of a deal, that you're supposed to be in a place at a time that when you're there, something happens. Because I was a goofy actor that had done a bunch of regional theater, one commercial, and I did a movie in where we were living down in Orange County called The Reunion. And I could tell the very first day that the actors probably were not going to go on to superstardom, but the crew seemed really, really together. So I asked the crew, and now being a producer, it makes sense because it's all about relationships and networks and stuff. So I went to one of the crew and I said, hey, what are you guys doing next? And they said, oh, we're doing the coolest movie with Ron Howard. And I went, really? They said, yeah. And it was before Grand Theft Auto. And what was the name of that movie? It was
Eat My Dust.
Eat My Dust, right. So I went up to the offices in Hollywood, and which I'd never really been to, went to Corman's office, and they said, see this lady, Terry Hughes. So I walked down the hallway and the door opens. And it's this older guy with a beard. And he said, who are you? And I said, oh, I'm Peter Isacksen. I have a meeting with Terry Hughes. And he said, oh, your crew? I said, no, I'm an actor. And he said, well, you don't want to see Terry Hughes. I'm the director. You want to see me? And it was Charles Griffith, and who was a huge Corman director. And so Shepard's me in the office. I read a few lines that he said, I want you to work next week. Do you have an agent? And I said, no, I don't have an agent. He said, go downstairs, one floor, tell the people at Dale Garrick, you're doing my movie. They're going to represent you. I'll call them in an hour to make the deal. Well, Dale Garrick at that point was known for representing like monkeys and parrots. He had all kinds of animals. And now he had me. So I do this movie and I show up on set, and Ron, his very first question to me was, you play basketball? And I said, yeah, I played a little in high school and I did this. We were telling stories and both this love of basketball. I did this movie for 7 days, and I guess was so unique looking, and my performance was whatever. I carried the review for years in my pocket that the head reviewer at the LA Times said, and who jumps off the screen is this young, talented actor, Peter Isacksen. And it was like, I came from nothing. I had nothing. So Ron, one day, back to the reason I'm sitting here, calls me and said, you want to have lunch at Paramount where I'm doing Happy Days? I said, Paramount? Like, I've driven by it. I've never been in. I get to Paramount, I go through the gate, said, Mr. Howard, got your parking spot, great. And I get to the Happy Days set, where to this day, I'm still friends with Anson and Donnie and this and all that. And they said, well, we're running late. So Ron sets you up with these two casting people at Paramount, so you're not wasting your time. So go say hi to them. I walked in their office and they said, oh, Ron called and we're not doing much. We're doing one pilot for NBC called CPO Sharky. And I went, oh, and I was so young and inexperienced and such a knucklehead actor that they handed me 2 pages and said, read this. So of course, you know, I get it. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, it's funny. Oh, that's funny. That's good. They said, no. Read it. Audition it with us. And I went, oh, gotcha. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm good. Right with you. So then I had lunch with Ron and booked Sharky, which, you know, I walked in the market 1 week and we were on. A few weeks later, I walked in the same market and couldn't get to the grocery aisle. I mean, to the fruits and vegetables, because there were only 4 networks and 37 million people the night before had seen me. And that was television back then. And 4 or 5 weeks later, I'm on the cover of TV Guide. Oh, which somebody just sent me a lovely copy of. So
there you go.
There you go. So I did the season of Sharky and constantly would pinch myself to go, A, I'm working with Don Rickles. B, Ron still talks to me kind of on a weekly, like, how are you doing? You got to come up to the house. He was my mentor at a few years older than me. And he had just married Cheryl. They went to high school together. And he just told me, like, how to be a real actor, how to save your money, how to do this, how to do that. And wait, hold on, someone's drilling. Hold on 1 second. Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, much better.
There you go.
There you go. That's much better. And so Ron was like this grounding human being that I just so respected. Didn't know what I had in getting to know Rance, Clint, Gene, the whole Cheryl, and it's Ron Howard. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. He just was so genuine and grounded. And I've tried for 45 years of my career to be more Ron Howard. And I'll end later with another story that's just so him. So anyway, so we did the first season and my agent called me and said, you have an offer to do a movie. And I said, I'm like eat my dust. And they said, yeah, kind of, but it's called Grand Theft Auto and Ron's directing it. And he'd like you to do it. And I went, well, yes, like, of course. And they said, well, we'll send over the script. I said, I don't need a script. It's just Ron's doing it. Where do we get to do it? Victorville. I went, Victorville? Cool. By the, Roy Rogers Museum. So we went out, a bunch of stunt people, a few actors, and shot this small movie that if you read The Boys, which is Ron and Clint's book, he did this movie he did Eat My Dust to do Grand Theft Auto. It was like star in one, you get to direct one. And this really wasn't the one he wanted to direct. This is something they had because they knew it was probably could make it very profitable. And he was so big on Happy Days. And I'm like happy to be there. Like that I got per diem and stayed in a hotel and was single and was like, man, this is good. Life is pretty perfect. And it was so small, the movie, and the way that Corman produced stuff, and so Ron had to fall into that, is Cheryl Howard catered it. And you'd see, like, okay, it's lunch, and Cheryl's got stuff probably from the hotel or wherever set up, and that's what we ate. And Clint and I became buds, and you didn't really know from day to day, kind of. I went, was that guy behind the camera yesterday? And Ron would go, no, he's an AC, but he wants to be a cameraman, so we're giving him a day behind the camera. Let's see how he does. That was Grand Theft Auto in a nutshell. It was small. It was like theater. And Ron had the innate ability to trust actors and let them do what they would do. And yet you could tell from the minute you walked on the set, he knew everybody's job. He knew every piece of equipment. And you just kind of followed the Ron Howard train. And it was 6 weeks in Victorville that was beautiful.
Yeah, I watched the film the other night to give myself a little refresher on it, and
yeah,
and it still holds up. It's still funny. I gotta say, one of the things I love about Ron Howard is how grounded of the fact that he will have his father rants and his brother Clint in his movies, even to this
yeah,
day, you still see Clint Howard pop up in his movies. And
right.
I'm really delighted about that.
Me too. It's who he is and who he will always be. And he'd do it with his daughter, and he'd do it with Clint, and he'll do it with a few other actors. And when I made the shift to producing, I sold a Goofy show to, it wasn't a Goofy show, it was a big Fox network special called A Day With. And they said, well, it's talent contingent. So you want to spend the day with someone, but you want to give them the camera to show you what their day is like. So whatever big movie star at that time, you don't want to see them acting. You want to see, like we did a piece with Matt Perry from Friends, who said to me, you won't believe this, but I've never been to the Playboy Mansion. So could my day be trying to find the Playboy Mansion? That's what the show was kind of loosely based on. Well, I had nobody. I just sold the show, and they said, well, somebody's got to commit. So I called Ron, and I said, listen, I'm now in your league. I'm producing. And he said, Peter, whenever, wherever, just the answer is yes. Just tell Fox yes. So I got a call the next day from his publicist, and she started, first words out of her mouth were, who are you? And what do you have over Ron Howard that he all of a sudden has to do this show without running it by us and this and that? I said, I don't know, I'm a producer. I sold a show, and I asked Ron, he said yes. And she said, I'm going to check with him. I'm going to check who you are. I'm going to talk to Fox, and I get back to you. And I was like, I'm just trying to make the transition. And she called me back and the next day and said, talk to Ron, got it. You're a friend, and you did something for him, and it's his pleasure. And not only did he do a day finishing Apollo 13, he brought our mutual friend Tom Hanks, and Fox is like, wait a second, you got Ron Howard and Tom Hanks? Like, all of a sudden now I'm a real producer. And that's Ron. That's just who he is. And he's kind of one of a kind. And, I just spent 4 months in Egypt for Discovery and Netflix. And there was a guy at the hotel who was going on a cruise and came to me and said, you were an actor, right? I said, uh-huh. And he came back from the cruise and was at the hotel again 4 or 5 days later. He said, gave me a copy of Ron's book, which I hadn't read, called The Boys, he and Clint. And he said, you're kind of all through all through the Corman stuff. He said, would you sign it in this? And I said, of course. I had no idea. And it's so if Ron wouldn't, if Happy Days hadn't run late and I had just sat in my car like the dumb knucklehead actor I probably was, and didn't follow up and go see casting people and all of a sudden end up on Sharky and end up here and do this, I don't know, I'd still be working at Jack in the Box, and because I was good at Jack in the Box, and we wouldn't be talking. But that's my Grand Theft Auto, that's my Ron Howard, that's my Clint Howard, and I adore him, and he's a mentor, and I don't see him nearly enough. I had a project that I sold, and they said, you need a studio. And I said, okay, like, what do you mean a studio? And they said, well, you need someone like bigger than your company to help out. So I went to Imagine and did it with them, and with Brian and Ron kind of in the background. So our paths have intersected over many, many years. And that's just who he is. And Grand Theft Auto was a big part of that. And I don't, we all try to look to the future and not, like, I don't look back on, people that write me on Facebook and say, oh my God, you were so good on The Love Boat or this episode or this movie. It's like, nah, Ron Howard, he started it all for me.
Isn't it interesting? Because Ron's had such a career, and his first movie, Drex, was Grand Theft Auto. And then you look, he goes up and you got, Splash and Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, and even did one of the Star Wars movies recently,
right.
Like,
right.
It's interesting watching his career where it started, and of course he was in American Graffiti. We can't forget that either,
Oh, no, you sure can't. And we just lost Bo Hopkins, who was a mutual Ron, Bo, Peter friend. We were all in that time together. So, yeah,
I remember Bo. Yeah,
and you can't forget Andy Griffith, where he made it look so easy, and that was Rance, and that was Gene, and that was growing up in the same house and not allowing Hollywood to grab him and do this. There was not one shred of that. There was an actor. I said to Ron, I have to go. I have 2 days off on Grand Theft Auto. So is it okay how am I going to get back and forth to LA? And he said, oh no, I have a buddy here, an actor who just did a huge mini series, and he'll give you a ride, and then he's coming back. I'll get someone else to give you a ride back. I said, total Ron, great. The guy that gave me a ride to LA had just finished playing Charles Manson, and I can't remember his name. Wonderful actor, but still, I think either was still shooting or this and that. And we stopped at a gas station, and people looked at me and went, there's the tall, goofy guy from Sharky with Charles Manson. And that was just, those were those kind of moments where you don't think of them until I get a text from you and they go, you gotta go back to those days in Victorville and with stuntmen and late nights and just goofy scenes in the middle of the desert that Clint and I would look at each other and go, do we have a script? And he goes, I don't know. Let's just do this A, B, and C. And we go, all right, let's do it. Ron, I go, God, that was funny. It was great. Move on. So
there's so much in Grand Theft Auto that was fun, I liked Ron Howard in it, and of course Nancy Morgan. I mean,
yeah,
very pretty,
Yes.
She was lucky to have her window up when you were spraying that stuff on the window.
Yeah. And Marion Ross.
Holy cow, she's so funny when the cop goes to tackle her and she punches him in the face.
Right. She and I had a discussion one day on a set, as actors will have,
Yeah.
because sometimes it all comes down to money. And so we were talking, Marion said, "Who's your agent?" And I said, "I think William Morris at the time or whatever." And she goes, "So Ron said to her she was the third highest paid actor on the movie."
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, "So that must make you number two," because I had a show on. She had a bigger show on. And I went, "Well, I don't know. How much are you making?" She goes, $795 a week. I said, "I'm making 800." That was Roger Corman. That $5 separated the, either she was second highest paid or I was third or whatever it was. But that $5 a week separated categories of actors. It just, and probably Nancy made more. Maybe she was second. Maybe we were third and fourth. I don't remember. But I just remember it was $5. And I was either $5 more than Marion or less. And we laughed about it because we did Love Book together, I don't know, a year later or whatever. We're like, well, we're making more money now. But I wouldn't trade one day on Grand Theft Auto or one day on Eat My Dust, which was, or one day I get to spend with Ron. I wouldn't trade any of it. It's, and you'll hear that, and I'm sure you do. There are other probably producer directors that that we've all, had the good fortune of working with. Aaron Spelling said to me one time, I was doing one of his shows, and I looked down, and he's standing next to me, and he said, "Hi, Peter." I said, "Hi, Mr. Spelling," and we kind of watched the action of what they were shooting, and he said, "Do you know why I hire you?" And I said, "No, Mr. Spelling, but," and again, this is completely being mentored by Ron Howard. I said, "No, Mr. Spelling, but I'm really glad that you do." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you why I do. You don't chew gum and smoke cigarettes as an actor, as a device. You just act." That's 42 or 43 years ago. I've never forgotten that moment. And I can mentally see moments in Grand Theft Auto and Eat My Dust with, my mom came out to Eat My Dust, and Ron was like, "Oh, that's your mom. Hold on, I got to get Gene," because Gene was on the set. And all of a sudden, my mom from New Hampshire, who we didn't know anybody in show business, all of a sudden she's having a long conversation with Ron Howard's mother. And we drove back from Piru or wherever we shot that one. And my mom was like, "Gene is such a nice lady." I was like, "She's Hollywood royalty." But you never felt it, because not they were in the same house in Toluca Lake, Burbank, for years and years and years. And Rance and Ron and Clint were upstairs in the back studio writing. And it just, you'd walk through the gate and you'd go, "Hey, oh, good, Peter's here." It's like, that's just, it's a different Hollywood, but beautiful. And that we're talking all these years later, and we're all still working. That's the beautiful part.
Yeah. Talk about working with Clint in these these scenes. Of course, you guys out in the dune buggy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was driving. I don't think you should let him drive you anymore. Shouldn't let him drive you anymore. Don't let him do
Right.
it.
No. you know, you don't, it's like you look back at that and go, like, there, you just did it. You just hopped in, and Clint was, he had done a big show. So, and he's Ron's brother, and he's just a good guy. And he's just like, we just laughed all the time. And I came from a show on Sharkey with Rickles where literally the producer had to come to me and say, "You need to stop laughing while you're acting." And I went, "But he's funny." And that's how it was with Clint. It was like, we would just scream along, and they're trying to get lines that are doing this. We're trying to do our own stunts. And he's just a good man too. Just Part of the
I think
Howard clan.
my favorite Clint Howard role is as Eaglebauer in Rock and Roll High School.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did he ever take you in there and give you test answers or hall passes and
No, 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 no.
oh
It, it's it's weird that you kind of do stuff and you wish you could put it in a capsule and have that capsule over here and compartmentalize that moment.
mhm.
And but when you're a working actor, it's like I always tell people, they say, oh, what is it like to guest star on I worked with Jason Bateman on whatever it was, and Saget was a friend, so you did Full House. And I said, it's like you're invited to dinner as a guest, and you go, and the whole family's there, and you get to eat, and you're there for a little bit, and then they say, "Did you have a good meal?" "Yep." "Great." And the next guest comes in, and that's you were a guest at a dinner, and you were either a crappy guest or you were really glad to be there. And for me, I was always just glad to be there. I was
Mhm.
just I knew it was a time in my life that I will always remember. And losing Saget a few months ago was tough.
Yeah.
And because when you run into people at different places, uh, it's like no time has gone by.
Mhm.
It's just, if I were to see Ron tomorrow, we would sit down and continue the same discussion that we started years ago.
Mhm.
And there was the movie he did, and it probably was when I was doing this producing thing, so it was probably Apollo. And he said, "I'm really sorry that you're not in this movie," because he said, "but at the same time, I'm really proud of you for taking your own path, taking the chance, and like a bunch of us did, you're now like a real producer." And he
Mhm.
said, "You've done a zillion commercials, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, welcome to the team. That's you're now on our side." And it was his way of saying, "I want you in the movie, but I understand that you've moved on, and there are actors that really are still acting and really want this." And do I sit here and say, at the ending of my career, if I did a week with Ron Howard on a movie, it would be the completion of a huge circle for me? Yes.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't be here without him. So that he started the whole circle. And it
Mhm.
makes me it makes me emotional because I start to think about what he has meant in my career.
Mhm.
And it will never be replaced. And I tell people all the time. And no one should get, "Oh, well, you did this, that." No, it's he was the guy. And there have been people along the way, just
Yep.
like you run into people and they introduce you to this and this, but it all started with somebody, and for me that was Ron.
Mhm. Yeah, I get that. I've lived here my entire life, and I'd never traveled until 2017. And I had one of my guests invite me to a horror film convention. I'd
Hmm.
never been on a plane before, nothing like that.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm gonna be 50 next a week from today. And it was Lisa Langlois, who was an actress in Class of 1984, a movie Michael J. Fox, an early film with him.
Uh-huh.
And she invited me to assist her at her table. And in addition to that, she showed me around Toronto, and I learned how to use the subways and streetcars because we don't have them here. And she was a mentor to me, and she and I are still in touch. Actually, I heard from her yesterday. But what you said about Ron Howard, I could say the same thing about her. Had she not just, and I asked her about that. I said, "Why me?"
Right.
She said, "You just saw something in me, you know," and I was
Yeah.
quite touched by that. But it's always nice when somebody says, you've got far more potential, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, and they
Well, the one thing that's beautiful about you is you're a listener,
mhm,
and you can't teach that. My wife's a really good listener,
mhm,
and I call her Oprah because Oprah was a really good listener. She would tell one question that she knew she would get three other answers from, that it would take her this way. And listening is hard, especially if you've been an actor, because your whole instinct is to talk first
mhm,
and get out in front of it. And so, what makes you good at what you do is you listen.
mhm. Yeah, you gotta have an understanding. It's like you had to reschedule here a couple times, and I always would tell podcasters, if somebody asks to reschedule. He said, it's not you. You don't know what's going on their end, which is
Right.
why I was able to do that, and helps keep good communication. I
Sure.
know, I know what you told me in the email, but I'm pretty sure Clint Howard was driving you somewhere. It broke down, right?
Yeah. 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 I think so. And again, those are moments that it's like, yeah. I mean,
I like it.
I
We
don't.
can fix it, and it blows up.
Yeah. I mean, that was that movie. It was just. It was. Like doing small theater where all of a sudden, like, lights go out and kind of stop. Someone comes out, screws the light, and says, "Okay, where were we? Oh yeah, this is where we were." That was Grand Theft Auto. It was, and I'm sure Alan said the same thing, and I'm sure Clint would say it was kind of awkward actors, waiver theater for filmmaking. I mean, now I have friends that produce movies in 12 days. Back then, I did Under the Rainbow with Chevy Chase, and Adam Arkin and I had a trailer together. We were on it for like 6 months. And you'd go, you'd shoot a page a day. That was not Roger Corman. And Ron took to it like directing TV. By the way, and I don't know if anyone's corrected this, he did do a movie before this that he directed that wasn't like a real like movie.
Hmm.
But we lived in a small apartment complex, and he shot this movie. I think it was called Gus and Mike, or Gus and Molly, or something. And he just brought cameras and just shot. And I think Donnie Most was in it. That would be my guess. I just kind of remember him talking about it and how excited he was to grab a camera and direct actors and do this. But certainly Grand Theft Auto was a big break for him.
Okay, let me see, because I'm going to see if I can find that, because I got his IMDb on here. Well, he did some shorts. Yeah, he did some shorts before Grand Theft Auto. Old Paint, Dead and Daring Do, and Cards, Gum. No, Cards, Keds, Gum, Gore, and Death.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think he knew he wanted to be a director for a while. So it's,
Well, it's interesting
well,
because he did the next movie he directed was Night Shift, where he had Henry Winkler in that. So he still
yeah,
worked with a lot of the Happy Days people
sure. And he had
up to,
Keaton,
yep, Michael Keaton, yep.
yeah, old friend. And, I think I was with Keaton after Night Shift came out, and we were at either in line at a movie or at Dodger Stadium seeing a ball game. And there was this usher that came up and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Keaton, there's a line of people that would like your autograph." And I just looked at him and I was like, "You're a friggin' movie star." Like, that's the power of that. And that's how quickly that happens. And he's handled it beautifully. And I think he and Ron are still friends. And we all like people go, oh, well, Michael Keaton, Saget, Ron, this, Ritter, I mean, it's just we all started out at the same place. We were all just young actors trying to make our mark. And, like Donnie Most and I are still good friends on Facebook, and we'll see each other. I go see him sing, I'll do this. And I was in the outfield on this goofy softball team that we played on with a bunch of actors. And so we're shagging flies and doing this. And Donnie Most came to me and said, it was after season 7 of Happy Days. And he said, I'm leaving Happy Days. I said, why would you leave? Why would you leave a show like that? And he said, because I'll forever be known as Ralph Malph, and I have more to give. And that's the reason I started to produce, is I thought there was a bigger world for me. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have a huge hit show that I was going to walk away with. And that took tremendous. I don't think he did. I think he stayed. And someone finally said to him, probably his wife or someone said, don't leave. Nah, just you are Ralph Malph. So just take it to the end and then do what you want to do. And now he's like Tony Bennett. He's such a wonderful singer and does big shows and all that stuff. So
absolutely.
Been a wild ride.
I watched Happy Days growing up, I used to, when I get home from school, I'd watch Happy Days, and I'd watch Laverne and Shirley. I actually had David L. Lander on here before he passed. I was glad to,
right?
Yeah, I was glad
to, right?
Mm-hmm. But I did the David L. Lander one from the station, and I was happy to have him on, and so. Yeah, but yeah, Grand Theft Auto, 45 years old, huh?
Hey, I'll take it.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny things. I love the preacher in it.
Yes, so do I. I can't remember the actor's name, but yes, he was Nicholas Pryor.
Was it Nicholas Pryor? He was in Airplane and
yeah,
and Risky Business.
It was not. I did a different movie with Nicholas Pryor, but the preacher, I think, was I can't remember his name, but I bet he was a Rance.
Hoke Holwell.
Oh, he was probably a Rance buddy out of that group because he was a little older and all that. Ah, yeah.
Oh, he was so funny. Playing this fake preacher. But I'm going to tell you one person that I always love seeing, but you know what? I'm fine just hearing him because, I really like Don Steele. Yeah. I remember first time I saw him was in Rock and Roll High School.
Sure.
Where he played Screamin' Steve Stevens. And of course, you hear his voice all through Gremlins, and I tell you, he had for a small background part in Gremlins. I love it when I hear him. Like he goes, "We're getting ready to turn the fire hoses on." Like that's the worst thing to do with the Gremlins.
Right.
Rock and Ricky's had a hard night, but I'm still on the air.
Man, it's just cool that you're such a fan of that. I mean, that's like, my wife's the TV watcher in the family, and I'm not. I'm making it now, and I don't really look back other than when I get an opportunity like this. It allows me to. I drive myself so hard to be who I think somebody like Ron would want me to be, and that I think I have, the potential to be as good of a producer as I was an actor. And so it's to hear Don Steele. I mean, it's like, yeah, there was a lot of those. There was a lot of those guys, and they're just like character actors, like Ed Begley. Like we would go to auditions, and there were like 4 tall actors, and we would all be in the room. And we go, hey, Ed, hey, Jamie, hey, this, hey, Kelly. And it's like, it's that. And when you started to do more television, it became square peg and a square hole. Whereas movies, like I knew what I was expected to do on Fantasy Island when Aaron and the producers hired me. I knew exactly this. In movies, and the beautiful thing about acting in movies is that you get weeks to kind of create these characters. Not that we did on Grand Theft Auto, but we did the best we could in the time we had. And that's the difference of, I did a movie with Dr. J, and it's like you were there 12, 13 weeks. And I was talking to somebody called me and they wanted to do an interview about the 40th anniversary of Fish at St. Pittsburgh or whatever it was. And it's like, so I let my mind take me back to those particular weeks. So Don Steele, I haven't heard that one. That's cool. But I love that you're a fan and that you watch this stuff, and we should all do more because we did some great stuff.
One of the funniest things, I laughed out loud. Like when I watched this in preparation for this, it was in the middle of the night after I get done work. And I'm glad that nobody above me could hear me, because I laughed out loud, so loud, when Don Steele was chasing them in the car and he ends up getting veered off and crashes into a house, and he's describing the living room as he's going through. I think that was genius.
Yeah. I remember watching them doing a stunt day where cars are just going over ramps, they're blowing them up, and I'm just like, there was a wonderful stuntman named Vic Rivers who I believe did Grand Theft Auto, and he invited me over a few times, and I just was like fascinated with that whole stunt world because they were a group of people that worked all the time together, trusted each other, had each other's back, and somehow Ron knew that in this movie, probably because of Eat My Dust and other things, but that's an innate group. That's an innate ability to trust that group. And so, yeah, there were some crazy stunts, not that they probably had the money to do them the way they would do them now, but yeah, anyway.
Yeah. And
it's a pleasure and fun, and it's a nice look back, and I appreciate the reach out, and happy 45th to GTA.
Oh yeah. Yeah, does it ever get frustrating, even with Ron Howard, about the Grand Theft Auto video game? Because that's gotta be, when I hear Grand Theft Auto, I think of Ron Howard's movie, but I guess you got the video game. I'm not a game player, so that would be.
I'm not either.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bug me. I mean, it's like, I don't know what came first. I guess we did.
Yeah, I would say so.
I've never played the game, so I don't know that, what character is this or what it is, but it's like, however this movie gets remembered is good. However, all of the stuff that, it's, my wife will say it's weird sometimes, we were someplace and traveling in Europe, and there was this group of Japanese tourists that were like doing a circle around me, and all I heard was love boat, and it's just like that it lives on, and that something I did brought joy to and a laugh to this, that. Man, that's the whole reason I took acting 101 a whole bunch of years ago.
I wanted to ask you too about Surf 2, because I've had Eddie Deason on here, and he was quite a character. Yeah.
Yeah. I did a lot with Eddie, and Eddie's kind of disappeared for a while and having a tough time. But Surf 2 was again one of those that we just did the hour-long behind the scenes. This guy called me and said, "Would you do if I sent a camera crew, would you just talk about Surf 2?" And it was the same kind of experience with Eddie and Lyle Wagner and all this, and Randall Badot, who wrote it and directed it, and really done a whole bunch since then. But that was his shining moment. And again, for that, Cleavon Little was one of the stars, and Cleavon called me at my house and said, "Hey, Peter, I'm really glad we're doing this movie together." Didn't really know him. And he said, "So you're Studio City, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "We're shooting in Malibu." I said, "Right." He goes, "I live right in between in Nichols Canyon." And he said, "I'm not a very good driver. Can you pick me up every morning and we'll just drive together?" This is Cleavon Little, who came off of Blazing Saddles.
Yep.
And he's asking me for a ride to the set on Surf 2. And so we would talk actor to actor every morning on the way and back about life and this and what was it like.
How
And
cool, huh?
It's like those are the things that are in little departments in your head where you go, wow, I remember Cleavon said this or someone said that, and that's beautiful.
Do you ever think about writing a book about
I
these
don't know. Yeah,
experiences?
I don't know. Maybe someday, somewhere. I don't know. People ask because it's like you have a lot of stories, but are they relevant? Are they this? So my kids are entertained still, which is good.
Yeah, but you got such a passion, the way you talk about these people, and it like the way you talk about Ron Howard and John Ritter you had mentioned, and people
Yeah,
like that. Like it sounds to me you're easy to make a connection with. I'm finding that anyway. And but you have some really glowing experiences that go into your producing today.
yeah. It. You know, you just kind of you just you have to live today, and you have to
Hmm.
live the experience of today. And I constantly look back at the opportunities I've been given by certain people along the way. And as a high school educated kid that grew up in New Hampshire, then we moved to Orange County, and then all of a sudden on television is the stuff that movies are made of. It's not what I ever thought would happen. And so, you know, yes, it's, I was a young producer at Fox, and there was a change in management at Fox Network, and there was the head of Fox Sports, David Hill, was bigger than life and brought football to Fox and baseball to Fox and did all this. All of a sudden was the president of the network. So he called me and he said, walked to his office and he said, "Isacksen," he's like, Australian, "Isacksen, what do you really want to do?" And I said, "You know what, David? I want to do the Super Bowl of archaeology." And he went, "What?" I said, "Yes, I want to do the Super Bowl of archaeology live, the biggest that's ever been done," because I knew he was a sports guy. And I thought, well, if I'm going to take a shot, and my agents are sitting there going, "What do you know about Egypt?" I didn't know anything, never been there. And Hilly looked at me, who's still kind of a mentor like Ron, and said, "Go do it." And I did. Somehow I pulled it off. So I've just finished 2 shows back to back for Discovery and Netflix that are my 6th and 7th shows in Egypt. I've been there 17 times. A kid from La Mirada High School, like, pinch me. That's okay. It's good.
You ever see any interesting wildlife in Egypt?
Yeah. When we get off, I will shoot you a picture because we did a live show 3 years ago for Discovery, and every day they were doing this. There was a group of archaeologists and Egyptians. They were doing a walk along because archaeology is always down below the surface, right?
Hmm.
Tombs and all that are, so they have to shave rock away, and there's stuff in the rocks. So we walked by it, and he said, "What do you see?" And I said, "I don't see anything." He said, "Take a picture of it. Just take a picture of the wall. And when you're back to your office in the, compound, blow it up and see what you see." And it is a 12-foot viper. buried. I'll tell you, you won't believe it. And it's just like, so yeah, we've seen stuff, and we've had people bit, and we've had people fall down shafts, and we've had this. I've had a lot of great experiences, but then again, Clint and I could have rolled the car in Grand Theft Auto, and we might not be talking now. Who knows? It just, you live it a day at a time, just
There
like
you
you're
go.
doing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, what do you have coming up that you want to promote for us?
Oh, I don't know. Quickly, I have a big 2-hour special on Discovery on the 100th anniversary of the opening of King Tut's tomb. That's a really cool show that my wife produced, and is a great group of people. And then we have a movie for Netflix that we shot at the same time, that, again, the way Netflix, I never worked for them, but it is kind of the story behind the story of archaeology, which is, and I don't have a date for that. But what we're doing right now is, I have a very dear friend, Stuart McLean, who I worked with in brand content and did a bunch of stuff with, called Deborah and I, and we worked together quite a bit, my wife and I. And she's the smart one, and I'm just the like showman, like, hey, let's do this. And we are getting ready to launch sometime around September the very first women's all sports network. It's never been
Nice.
done. It's all women, it's all sports. We've got a bunch of leagues, so we're in the midst of kind of, they've raised all the money. We're going to be on Amazon. We're going to be here. We're going to be there. But it's called the Women's Sports Network, and it's a really exciting thing to be a part of.
So we're not going
something like that.
We're not going to see Clint Howard and drag sneak onto the show.
Well, you said that. I'm not going to give it up. If Clint wants to come out, it's sure, he can play a little one-on-one with me.
Do you ever get to do the conventions or anything like that?
Yeah, I've done a few of them, but again, it's like you kind of segment your life, and it's like, I like my friend, my good buddy is Barry Pearl, who played Duty in Grease.
I've interviewed him.
You have? Well, he's one of my oldest friends.
There you go.
Grease is, yeah, and Grease is his, like, it never stops for him.
I've interviewed a few people from Greece.
Yeah. So that's cool. So I've done a couple, and I got to sit next to Ed Asner, who hugged me and said, "You're a really good actor." And I went, "Thank you, because you were the ultimate." So yeah, you do a few of those, and I do a few of these, which are always fun. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I think I know somebody else that would love to. I think I know somebody else would love to have you on their show too. If you'd like, I'll send your information to them.
Sure. You bet. Anytime.
Yeah. What's the most interesting thing you've ever been asked to sign, speaking of conventions?
Oh, I think, and I didn't do it, a guy came up to me, and I did this movie, The Fish to Say Pittsburgh, with the only movie that Dr. J ever did. And it was in a group of a few movies about basketball that, and frankly, I don't think it's a terrific movie, but it's Dr. J's only movie, and it's very authentic, and Jonathan Winters and a bunch of good people. And so this guy came up to me at one of these shows and said, "Do you have any Fish memorabilia?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I actually have the crew t-shirt that says Pisces and Fish Say Pittsburgh on it somewhere." And he said, "What about a poster?" And I said, "Well, I don't have it with me because I'm here I'm signing Sharky stuff and other stuff." And he said, "What would it take to buy the poster?" And I said, poster's not for sale. It's an original. The studio gave it to me when the movie was, and he said Shaquille O'Neal is an enormous fan and has such a huge fish collection. Whether this is true or not, I have no idea. And he said, if you ever want to sell the T-shirt or the poster, he said, here's my number. Call me. The check will be delivered. That was the weirdest thing. That was like, wow. And then, you've like, my wife is beautiful, and that I'm married to such a beautiful woman is like shocking to me, because until I was 18, like I didn't have a date. Thank God I got famous, because I would have been just lonely. But so I think I've had, other women that, were great looking actresses come up and go, oh, you're such a funny actor. It's like, oh, now it happens. So, but I've only done one or two of the shows. So Pearl has much better story. They just went to Liverpool. Greece is the word.
Greece is the word. I've had a few people from Greece on here. Yep.
Yeah, of course. But
yep.
Grand Theft Auto is 3 words. So we beat them by 3.
There you go. There you go. Yes, and celebrating its 45th anniversary. I was really happy to do this with you today. 2 things before I let you go. One, do you have any charities that you're involved with that you want to plug and promote on here?
Anything to do with cancer, I would plug and promote. I lost my dad. We lost Mary Ann Kennedy, who's my wife's mother. So American Cancer Society, I would do anything for it at any time. And believe it or not, my favorite animal on the planet is the elephant. And anything anyone can do to help and have sanctuaries for elements. We're going to Thailand and sometime here in the near future. We've been a couple of times, and it's our favorite way to spend money. I'd rather spend money on the elephants than eat. So those 2
I
things.
love elephants. Oh my. Yeah. What an amazing animal.
No kidding. And abused like you wouldn't believe. And then these beautiful people that take them out and build these sanctuary for them and let them be elephants again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, it's funny. I saw a video the other day of an elephant moving somebody's car and doing it with such ease.
Yeah. They're big.
Yep.
They are big. And they're smart.
Yeah. Well,
that's why I like them. I'm not so smart, but I'm big. So
well, I saw a list on I think it was on YouTube. Top 10 smartest animals on the planet. Elephants ranked number 4.
Is that right?
Yep.
Oh, that's a good one to know.
Number 5 was ravens. They were the top for birds.
Yeah. I can see that.
Number 3 was orangutan.
Yeah.
Number 2 was dolphins. And number 1 was chimpanzee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That reminded me. You just reminded me of something, and I got to go, and you've got to go, and it's I've bored you for way too long here. But Ron Howard's first pilot on television, Clint and I also did, with a young actor who we all looked at and went, man, like if I look like that, I'd be such a huge star. It was Rob Lowe. And it was about a zoo and this traveling zoo for the production company were the Osmonds. And so it didn't sell, and I don't know what happened, but it was not probably a year and a half after. It was one of the first pilots I did after Sharky. But again, Ron Howard, like, you want to do this? And I went, yeah, of course. Is Clinton doing it? Yeah. Well, then we're doing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you know what? It was wonderful having you on here today and celebrating 45 years of Grand Theft Auto, the movie.
The movie.
The movie.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for the note.
Oh yeah.
And thank you for the time.
Before I let you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
No, sure. What do I got to do?
Just state your name and say that we're celebrating the 45th anniversary of Grand Theft Auto. and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Gotcha. All right.
Go for
Hey,
it.
it's Peter Isacksen. We're celebrating the 45th anniversary of Grand Theft Auto, the movie. And we're here with Greg on Python's Paradise. And it's been more fun than I ever thought it would be.
Yep. Well, it was wonderful having you on today. Next time, let make Clint Howard sit in the passenger side.
Okay, good. Good.
I'm sorry, I got a rib on him on that. But thank you so much. You have yourself a wonderful day and excellent luck on the producing work you're doing now.
Thank you very much, Greg. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You take care and God bless.
All right. God bless. Thanks.
Bye-bye.